with Zach Robinson. I'm Steve Palazzolo, and this is your Georgia Weekly Breakdown, brought to you by Eckrich, the official smoked sausage of the Georgia Bulldogs. Zach, we said that the Georgia-South Carolina game might be a tight one, but Georgia was really incredible from the get-go. 41-17 victory over South Carolina. It was an early season SEC East test because South Carolina getting a lot of hype, a lot of publicity in that division, but Georgia passed it and dominated the game.
It was incredible because going into this game, we talked about it last week, this is going to be a very good test on the road, 3:30 CBS game. Everybody's watching, and the offensive and defensive lines absolutely dominated the game. I thought they were the story of the game from the very first start. Offensive line running the football, clean pockets for Jake Fromm, and then the defensive line just disrupted that running game that South Carolina wanted to establish, could never get it going the whole game.
So that bodes well for Georgia moving forward because SEC football is all about winning in the trenches as much as we've talked about Georgia's playmakers that we love. But that offensive line, you mentioned very little pressure, just two the entire game that they allowed as a unit. What about some of the other guys that really showed well? Because the run game was looking good for Georgia. Loved watching those guys run block up front.
That left side of the offensive line played a great game in the run game. Solomon Kinley looks like he's locked down that left guard spot. He over and over was continuing to get push up front. And then Andrew Thomas played well. Obviously, everybody saw him go down with an ankle injury. We'll see the status of him. But Cade Mays, a true freshman, came in, and they didn't miss a beat. I mean, he was very aggressive, physical in the run game, opened up those holes for especially Elijah Holyfield stepped up. But, man, those guys on the left side of that line were really, really good.
Yeah, Mays was very impressive. And, again, just shows what Georgia has been bringing in from a recruiting standpoint and from a depth standpoint. Let's discuss some of those playmakers because our boy, Mecole Hardman, making us look good. Again, the last few weeks we were talking about how he's one of my favorite receivers in the entire country because he's very fast. We saw that speed on Saturday, but he's got some quickness. He knows how to run routes. But he just had next level speed on a couple of those little bubble screens, took one for a touchdown. You could see safeties had angles on him, and he's just outrunning them left and right. Love what he did. Love what Elijah Holyfield did as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And especially on the screens you mentioned, he had 4 catches for 58 yards, averaged 14.5 yards per catch on screens.
On screens alone, right?
On screens alone, not to mention the coverage bust on the back end that he also had a big game. But if this guy's got a crease, we saw it the first game, the first week, and then we saw it again. Just if he has a small area to run through, he has such great acceleration that he's making a ton of plays. And then Elijah Holyfield ended up with the most yards. Swift played well, but Elijah Holyfield ended up 9 carries for 76 yards. Line blocks really well. The inside zone running game when he's finding creases was really, really good.
And then when we talk about the quarterback position, Jake Fromm, I mean, when he's the third, topic we're talking about here on the offense, because he just played a nice, efficient game. Adjusted completion percentage was 89.6, meaning we're giving credit for all accurate passes, whether they're dropped or not, taking out throwaways. So he just did his job outside of one bad interception, right? I mean, he was pretty much getting the ball to these playmakers, letting them work after the catch.
Exactly. He was a great distributor, took what was there, minus the one mistake, but just continuously found the open man, whether if it was a check down where DeAndre Swift's making a play after the catch, the screens on Mecole Hardman, a lot of these are kind of the run-pass option where you can hand it off. If he's got a numbers look, throw it out there. Made great decisions with those throughout the game, and just overall played a very, very clean game.
Georgia offense was rolling, but before we get to the defensive breakdown, they also played well. A quick word from our sponsor. It's Eckrich, the official smoked sausage of the Georgia Bulldogs.
Hey, man, Georgia-Auburn is on the $1 Million Challenge schedule.
That's awesome. Between the hedges this year, right?
Yes, sir.
You imagine winning $1 million in front of that crowd?
No, that place would be bananas. Even Uga would be crazy.
That's one cool Bulldog.
I like Bulldogs. You like Bulldogs?
Come on, man. I love Bulldogs.
Enter at EckridgeFootball.com for your chance to win $1 million at the Georgia-Auburn game.
Do I like Bulldogs?
All right, let's get to the defensive side of the ball. We talked about the offensive line, the trenches on the offense, but the defensive line, they did their job as well. Last week we said, look, they have to stop South Carolina's run game. South Carolina wants to establish that run. Georgia did a great job of shutting it down.
Yeah, completely made them one-dimensional throughout the game. Rico Dowdle, 7 carries for 18 yards. We're expecting that inside, that interior that has some inexperience, and some guys are shuffling through to get tested. And Tyler Clark disrupted in the running game. all game. He also had one hurry, one batted pass, but I thought he was the story on the interior. And then DeAndre Walker on the edge played well in the running game, and then he was the guy that was able to get pressure when they needed to get pressure. Ended up with 1 sack, 2 other pressures, and then 3 stops in the running game, which was all big. But that interior defensive line, especially Tyler Clark, was fun to watch all game.
So they did well in the run game, and then they set the tone in the pass game early on. There was a tipped interception that went to our boy DeAndre Baker for a pick 6. He was our number 1 corner.
Didn't quite get the TD on it, but
oh no, that's right. He was just out right at the goal line, right? So I was calling it a pick 6. I'm over there, but I'm just blaming. I'm just blaming South Carolina. I'm blaming the quarterback for that one, no matter what the return was. But Baker had the interception, 2 pass breakups as well, and then the other guy in the secondary that you highlighted in the season preview show, Richard LeCount, looking great back there. Movement skills, playmaking. The secondary played well.
Yeah, they did. DeAndre Baker answered the bell. There was a lot of talk about the receiver matchup last week, and he answered the bell big time. The 2 pass breakups, just played with an aggressive mentality. You could tell that this secondary was fired up and ready for that test with Deebo Samuel on the other side. And then LeCount was all over the field. I think you even texted me during the game. You're like, LeCount is everywhere.
I did, yeah.
He was continuously just showed up in the picture, was making plays kind of from his center field spot, and then just getting help sideline to sideline, and then played really well in the run game too. So those 2 guys were really, really fun to watch.
It's one of the stories of the season, though, because the big thing about college is having that depth and having new guys to step in. So when you have a player like LeCount that you have to rely on more this year in a new role, you know, it's great to see that. So you want to see what that spot looks like early in the year, and he's taken to it. 2 games in, looking very good at the guy that you identified before the season. Let's look ahead now for Georgia. They've got Middle Tennessee State this weekend. Not trying to look past them at all, but it should be a win for the Bulldogs. But what are they going to get from a Middle Tennessee State? They definitely have a nice veteran quarterback in Brent Stockstill.
Yeah, you know, everybody saw the first game of the season. They struggled against Vandy. Vandy had a handily win. Then Tennessee Martin, they scored a ton of points last week. But you mentioned it, Brent Stockstill, very experienced passer. They're going to get a fair test on that side of the ball because they're going to want to throw the football. They're probably going to get down early in this game, and they're going to have to try to throw themselves back in it. So the secondary, the pass rushers will get some great reps this week. We're not calling it a cupcake game because it is a fair test with a Brent Stockstill, you know, at quarterback. So, I think the secondary will get a very fair test.
So there you have it. That's our Georgia breakdown for the week. A couple new stars emerged, Elijah Holyfield, Richard LeCount, and they have their big game against Middle Tennessee State this weekend. Be sure to tune in every week for our Georgia coverage. Of course, it's all brought to you by Eckrich, the official smoked sausage of the Georgia Bulldogs. Don't forget to pick up your Eckrich smoked sausage at your local grocery store for this weekend's tailgate or homegate party. And make sure to visit EckrichFootball.com for great game day recipes and to enter their $1 Million Challenge.